How did the arts come into this picture for you? At what age did you start connecting with the process of making, or at least the idea of taking the information that you were taking in and trying to communicate it in some way?
Well, if my mother's to be believed, I drew in the high chair. I would draw safety pins from my diapers. And she said I would draw all over the high chair, and I just couldn't stop drawing. So she plied me with art supplies from a young age. And I still think drawing and painting is the most exciting thing a person can do. That hasn't changed. That's it. I always drew mostly mermaids at a very young age. No more. So that's how I started, and I never stopped. You know, they say all children love art, and I guess I never grew up.
So you connected with arts at a very young age, and you're making, and probably not even thinking of it as making, but just as a way of being. Mm-hmm. So when did it become formal for you? What sort of training did you receive that sort of started to identify for you as art and as a formal acceptance or desire to pursue it?
Well, I'll backtrack just a wee bit. Because of being able to draw really well and the teachers hating to do their bulletin boards, I got asked to, and every time during school. So that was kind of an affirmation.
So is this like elementary school?
Yeah, elementary school. Yeah, it's a good way to be teacher's pet, too. Yeah. But I came here, and I went to high school at Dixie Hollins High School. At that time, they had a vocational programs 3 hours a day of commercial art, as well as having an incredible photography lab. And I liked art. I liked it so much, other than like school per se. I went to during the summer to the photography class. We all had Hasselblads cameras. I mean, it was just so outfitted, the school. It was amazing in retrospect, until I got thrown out. And then, and I got thrown out at age 17 and had my son at age 18, because that's what they did back then. And so I still kept continuing drawing and painting, and tried to figure out a way to make a living doing it. So I actually brought some early pieces of my first published pieces. I was like 20 or 21 in the Floridian magazine and some other places. And by a strange set of circumstances, I went to, there was a women's center here at the time, and I had work hanging up there. And the then professor at the time at Eckerd College, Margaret Rigg, said, "Where did you go to college?" I'm like, I didn't go to college. You know, I took a night class at St. Pete College and USF, but I didn't go to college. And she goes, "Well, that's no excuse. Come to my office at such and such a time and date." It was like about 6 weeks away, and bring your portfolio. So I did. I was living in subsidized housing. I was a single parent at the time, and I had to take, in Pinellas Park, so I had to take 2 buses to get to Eckerd College. For this appointment, lugging my portfolio. So she came and she looked through the portfolio, and she didn't say much. She'd look up at me and down. Very stern woman. And then she said, "Come with me." And so I just followed behind, and she marches in with no appointment to the dean's office and says, "Look at this work. She needs to be here, and you need to give her money." So I was horrified. I was really embarrassed because I thought she was crazy. And so I went home And I didn't think anything of it for 6 months. 6 months later, I get a letter in the mail with a full financial aid package. I did have to take some student loans, and I worked when I worked also doing sewing for people, putting myself through college, and doing scrimshaw, which ivory was then legal, and whale's teeth, and a lot of it was kind of hippie stuff with, you know, elves and things like that. But the jeweler I worked for had a clientele that was mostly coke dealers, and so whale's teeth are hollow. So what he would make for them was he would cut off the bottom, make a bezel on the top, usually with a piece of turquoise, and my job was to do pornographic scrimshaw on these containers. So, and that was a hot market. So that's what I did, and you know, I had kind of fun doing it too. So
if you don't mind me placing this in time here, what year was it, or what years was this happening?
Probably 73 through 77. And while I was at Eckerd, I dragged my son to all these classes with me too, and they are big on having an abroad program. So I thought, you know, I'm never going to have this opportunity. My mother and father had a 7th and 10th grade education, respectively. So I went on their abroad program, but they wouldn't let me stay on campus because I brought my son with me. And so I found housing, cooking, and cleaning for a stockbroker. And let's just say my job description expanded in such a way that I had to leave. And so I was walking down the Thames. This was crying. I'd just brought my son to school there. And I
So now wait a minute, you're in Europe at this point in time.
I'm in Europe at this point, and I think I was a junior. Junior in college then. And so I ran into somebody that was on the plane, who's Richard Matthews. He's the director of, he's at UT, the director of book arts, and he's a Pre-Raphaelite scholar as well. And he's the editor of the Tampa Review. So I didn't know any of this, of course, at the time. I recognized him because my son would run up and down the plane charming everybody. So people remembered him. And he's, what's the matter? Why are you crying? And he said, well, I'm on sabbatical, but I've taken the sabbatical to be a visiting professor at the William Morris Society, and I'm living in his house, and we need some help in the house. We need some work, not glamorous restoration work. If you'd like to come and live there, we can set up something that you can afford and make worthwhile. So at the time, I didn't even know who William Morris was or the Pre-Raphaelites. So I ended up living in William Morris's bedroom right on the Thames with my son. And the basement, a lot of times because there was work in the front hallway, we'd have to go up through the basement. And the basement had all of Morris's woodblock prints for his wallpaper and chintzes, as well as Kelmscott Press, where Christina Rossetti and all the Pre-Raphaelites used to do their printmaking. We couldn't be in the house on Sundays because the society met. It's now a museum, I just found out. So by a strange fluke, and while I went there, the abroad program that I was on, I was the only person there as that wasn't part of a group. So I went to City and Guilds of London, England, which was a guild from the 15th century. And a lot of their big thing was art restoration. And I remember trying to draw and paint wearing finger gloves the whole time. It was so cold. And it was you had to come in and get in there at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then you couldn't leave until 5. You had to sign in and out in red. And I didn't have any money to get there. So I had to I would walk one tube stop away with my 1 pence ticket and get on the subway and get off where I needed to go, which was South London, and walk up the fire escape with my 1 pen in the dark, several stories, with my 1p ticket, and then on the way back I would get off at a stop, the next stop, so it only looked like I went to one stop in one day. I'm not proud of that, but that's what I had to do to survive.
So, how many years were you in Europe?
I was there less than a year at that time,
Okay.
and I ate way too many Brussels sprouts. I was on a budget, so subsidized food was Brussels sprouts, New Zealand lamb. I'm trying to think, a lot of gross stuff.